The question is that the amendment be agreed. I call the member for, in continuation, the member for Charlton.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. When I was speaking on this bill previously, I was going through the $11.5 million cut to the Building Multicultural Community Grants program, a cut that could have been avoided using just 10 days of the interest bill from the government's nakedly political injection of $8.8 billion into the Reserve Bank Reserve Fund. As part of this cut to this grants program, we were seeing the Ethnic Communities Council of Newcastle and Hunter lose a $150,000 grant to build the first ever multicultural men's shed and community garden at their community centre. Members from all sides of this House will be aware of the wonderful contribution that men's sheds provide to our community, and this was a truly innovative idea from the Ethnic Communities Council to have a multicultural men's shed. 90 men had already registered to join this shed, and they've lost their $150,000 grant, which was awarded in the previous government and fully budgeted for. Given that the funding agreements for the program stated the projects had to be completed by 30 June 2014, most organisations had begun the planning process, and many are now well advanced in their project and are considerably out of pocket. Vedic Samadhi are out of pocket for more than $14,000 after undergoing a lengthy building design and developmental approval process, and the Ethnic Communities Council has invested around $49,000 on plans, DA approvals, electrical works and site preparation. I'm advised that on Tuesday 25 February the department called the Ethnic Communities Council to advise that they will reimburse $4,500 for costs associated with the lodgement of a developmental application to Newcastle Council. However, they refused to acknowledge the more than $44,000 invested by the council in utilities fees, design, EISs and electrical work required to get the approval for the DA. So these groups made the decision to invest in these projects in good faith. They'd had their grants awarded in accordance with the grants process, and now they're considerably out of pocket because of the actions of the Abbott government. These are groups that have very low budgets. They operate on a shoestring, often through the operation of goodwill and donations from their community. To see them out of pocket to such a great extent demonstrates the contempt this new government has for community groups. I'm sure that, like members on this side of the House, Coalition MPs would have enjoyed attending citizenship ceremonies on Australia Day, welcoming our newer citizens. These ceremonies are wonderful demonstrations of our modern multicultural Australia. I would just like to highlight the hypocrisy of this government that, although they pay lip service to multiculturalism, they have in fact cut funding to the very groups that are on the ground making multiculturalism work. Deputy Speaker, in the time allotted that's remaining, I'd like to discuss another part of the Appropriations Bill, and that's defence funding. At the moment, we have the naval shipbuilding industry in a crisis. The entire industry is in a crisis where they're waiting for work. Most of the shipyards in this country that build naval ships, Forjax in the Hunter, BAE at Williamstown, BAE Henderson, are looking at work running out in the next year, and we're looking at between 4,000 and 5,000 job losses if nothing is done, including 900 jobs going in my region of the Hunter Valley. Once lost, these jobs will be very hard to rebuild, and we will need to rebuild them, Deputy Speaker, because under the current white paper, the Royal Australian Navy will need to acquire 40 major naval vessels in the next couple of decades. And it is essential that we build most of these ships, if not all of them, here, because there is a direct link between the ability to build a naval vessel and the ability to maintain them. And as an island nation, it is essential for our national sovereignty that we can maintain our own naval vessels so that we are not dependent on any other nation in the world. Labor had a solution, Mr Deputy Speaker, and we took to the last election a proposal to bring forward the replacement of 2 supply ships and to guarantee a minimum amount of work being provided in Australia, with a real opportunity for both ships to be built entirely within this country. This would have helped Forjax, it would have helped BAE, who would have had to compete for the work but had a decent shot of overcoming the shipbuilding valley of death that they currently face. There are other options, Mr Deputy Speaker, including building a 4th air warfare destroyer, advancing the replacement of the patrol boats that have seen some operational maintenance difficulties, or beginning early construction of our frigate replacements based on a hull modelled on the AWD. All of these options are worth exploring, but we need urgent work to resolve this issue. If these shipyards, most particularly BAE in Melbourne and Forjax up at Tomago, do not receive the opportunity to bid for new contracts shortly, they will have to start making workers redundant. And this will lead to 4,000 to 5,000 direct job losses and the impact on families and communities, not to mention the impact on other communities that depend on that work, whether it's steel suppliers and other specialty subcontractors. And this is not only an economic and social impact, it will be an impact on our national defence. Once these jobs are lost, they'll be very hard to rebuild, and as an island nation, this will be a great tragedy that will reduce our national sovereignty. So I urge the new government to find a solution quickly on this. They've been briefed on this when they were in opposition. This should be a bipartisan approach. No one wants to score political points on this. We need a solution. Otherwise, we'll see thousands of jobs going, devastating communities that have already seen significant job losses, whether it's in the Hunter Valley or in Melbourne, who have seen the loss of Toyota and other industries go from that particular region. So I urge the new government to take action on this. I'll be working very closely with the employers and the unions and the workforce in my area. I've already talked to Mr Lindsay Stretton, the CEO of Forjax, a few times about this issue, and I've spoken to the Australian Manufacturing Workers Union, who represents the workers on this site. This is an important issue. I urge the government to take action, not sit on their hands, wait for a new white paper process. We need an urgent resolution now, or we will lose thousands of jobs and face a reduced national capability. Mr Deputy Speaker, this appropriations bill contains a number of initiatives. Some of them are nakedly political, like the $8.8 billion injection into the Reserve Bank in 1 year, which will see dividends paid only 6 weeks later back to the government. And it yet again demonstrates the skewed priorities of this government. It's all about superficial politics, not acting in our national interest.